I want to be clear about something. I am not the kind of person who reads other people's messages. I have never been that person. I have, in fact, a particular and principled distaste for the practice. The way some people feel about loud phone calls on trains or leaving cupboard doors open. A mild but genuine conviction that it is simply not done. I want you to understand this, because what I am about to describe is not a character flaw, or not only one. It is the story of a Sunday morning, an unlocked phone on a kitchen counter, a message open on the screen, and the specific failure of willpower that occurs when you are half awake and the first 3 words you see are your own name. Her name was Layla. She was my roommate. She had been my roommate for 11 months. And the message on her phone from her best friend Hannah read, I know, but have you actually told him? Because from everything you've described, the man has no idea. I stood at the kitchen counter in my socks at 8:15 on a Sunday morning, and I read it. I read the message above it. I read the one above that. I was still reading when I heard her bedroom door open. She came into the kitchen. She saw me. She saw the phone in my hand. She looked at my face, which I can only imagine was doing something complicated. And then, without flinching, without raising her voice, without doing any of the things a reasonable person might do upon finding their roommate holding their unlocked phone, she said, Go ahead, I left them there for you. 6 words. Present tense. She had known exactly what she was doing. I put the phone down on the counter. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Outside, a pigeon made its case for the morning. My name is Eli Ward. I'm 31. I work in urban planning. I spend my days in the gap between what a city is and what it could be, which is either meaningful or maddening depending on the hour. I live, or have lived for the past 11 months, in a 2-bedroom flat on the 3rd floor of a building with a working elevator and a communal garden that nobody uses except Mrs. Petroff from the ground floor, who uses it every morning with a dedication I respect enormously. I moved in because the previous flat had become untenable, for reasons that were nobody's fault and everybody's, and because Layla had a spare room. And because Layla and I had been friends, peripheral friends, the kind who meet at parties and have one excellent conversation every few months and have always meant to follow it up for the 2 years before that. The spare room solved a problem. What I had not fully accounted for was what happened when a peripheral friendship became a daily one. Layla Osei was 30, a graphic designer who worked from the 2nd bedroom she'd converted into a studio, which meant she was home most days. Which meant that the flat had a particular quality of inhabited warmth even when I arrived back from the office at 6 or 7, feeling like I'd been wrung out. She designed book covers and brand identities and the occasional illustrated piece, and she approached all of it with a precision and a specific visual confidence that I had always found quietly impressive. Her work was on the walls, her own and things she had collected, and the flat looked, because of this, like somewhere a person had actually thought about, rather than simply landed. She had a coffee habit that was technically 2 coffees before 9, but was actually 3, the 3rd one disguised as a refill. She had a way of reading, legs over the arm of the sofa, book held above her head, that seemed structurally inadvisable, and which she had been doing for 11 months without apparent consequence. She had a playlist she put on when she was working that I had come to associate, entirely without intending to, with the sound of Sunday afternoons and the smell of whatever she was cooking, and the specific piece of a flat where someone else is present, and neither of you needs to perform anything. She had a best friend named Hannah, who came round on Thursdays, and who had, approximately 4 months into my living there, looked at me across the kitchen table with the expression of a woman filing a conclusion she'd already reached, and said nothing whatsoever. I had filed this under Hannah being Hannah and moved on. I was revising that categorization now. Here is what 11 months of living with Layla Osai had actually been, viewed from October with the texts on the counter. It had been the coffee ritual. She made the first one. I made the second. This had not been discussed or agreed upon. It had simply happened by the third week and become the shape of mornings. It had been the specific quality of the flat when she was working in the studio and I was at the kitchen table with my reports. Not silent, more companionable. The kind of quiet where two people's presence in the same space is itself a thing. It had been the November illness, which I will come back to. It had been the way she had rearranged the bookshelf in the hallway 4 months in, just slightly, and when I noticed and asked, she had said it was bothering me, and I had said you could have asked, and she had said I didn't want to ask. I wanted to fix it, and this made me laugh for longer than the situation required. It had been the Friday evenings that became a soft habit, without anyone deciding they should be, not every Friday, not planned, just often enough that by month 8 I had stopped making other arrangements for Friday evenings, without quite knowing why. It had been the rain film, 3 Fridays ago. It had been the way she sometimes knocked on my door when she was taking a break from work and said I need someone to explain something to me, and then explained it herself in the process of telling me about it. And I had understood that I was not being asked for a solution, but for the particular kind of attention that makes thinking easier. And I had been glad to be the person who could provide that. I had looked at all of this for 11 months and seen good roommate, good friend, good situation. I had been very thorough about seeing only that. Here is what the texts said. I will tell you what I read before she came out of her bedroom, because it is the context for everything that followed, and you deserve to have it. The thread was from the previous evening. Layla had texted Hannah at 11:42 p.m. Do you ever just sit with someone in the same room and feel like you're the only two people anywhere? Hannah had replied, yes, but usually that's called dating. Lol. Layla had sent back, we're not dating, Hannah. Okay, roommate Layla, stop, Hannah. I'm just saying. The way you described the thing with the film last week, Layla, that was just a normal evening, Hannah. You texted me 4 separate updates, Layla. Because you asked Hannah. I asked once. You sent 4 updates. One of them had a bracket explaining his exact facial expression, a pause in the thread of about 6 minutes. Layla. Okay, fine, Hannah. Okay, fine, Layla. It was a very specific facial expression, Hannah. I know. But have you actually told him? Because from everything you've described, the man has no idea. The thread ended there. That was where I had come in. I stood in the kitchen and held the phone and understood, with the retrospective clarity of someone who has just been handed the key to a locked room, that there had been a locked room. The film she was referring to had been 3 Fridays ago. We had been watching something I no longer remembered the name of, and halfway through it started raining. Properly raining, the kind that changes the quality of an evening, and neither of us had suggested doing anything differently, so we had just stayed. Her on the sofa, me in the chair, and finished the film, and then talked for 2 hours about something else entirely while the rain organized itself on the windows. I had driven home from that Friday feeling, without quite articulating it to myself, like the evening had been something. I had not sent 4 updates to anyone. I had thought about it vaguely and then not done it, which was its own kind of information. She came into the kitchen. She saw me with the phone. She said the 6 words. I set the phone on the counter. Layla, I said. I know, she said. She came to the counter, picked up the phone, set it face down. She had the expression of a person who has been bracing for something and is now simply present with the fact that it has happened. Not embarrassed, not retreating, just there and waiting to see what I was going to do with what she'd given me. How long, I said. Has the phone been sitting there? She looked at me. The corner of her mouth moved. Since 7, she said. It was 8:15. An hour and 15 minutes. She had put her unlocked phone on the kitchen counter with the thread open, and then gone back to her room and waited. I have poor instincts around people who are braver than me. I never know whether to be humbled or alarmed. In this case, I was both. You could have just told me, I said. I know, she said, but you would have been careful about it. You're careful about everything. This landed accurately. I am, in fact, careful about everything. I am a planner. I work in the gap between cities. I think in terms of long timelines and contingencies and the cost of getting things wrong. I had for 11 months been applying this professional instinct to the fact of Layla Osai and had arrived, repeatedly, at the same answer: too much to lose. Wait for clearer signal. Do not act on insufficient evidence. She had decided to provide the evidence herself. The facial expression, I said. From the film. She pressed her lips together. Hannah has a very good memory. What was the expression? She looked at her hands. Then at me. Her voice, when it came, was quieter, the register she used when something mattered enough to be careful with. Like you were somewhere you wanted to be, she said, and you didn't know I was watching you figure that out. Here is what I did not say. In the first 30 seconds after that, I did not say I didn't know you felt this way, which would have been a partial truth deployed as a deflection. I did not say we should talk about this properly, which is the thing careful people say when they want to reframe a conversation into something they can control. I did not say anything that gave me an exit, because she had not taken one, and she was standing in our kitchen at 8:15 on a Sunday, having left a phone on the counter for over an hour, and the least I owed her was to be in the room the same way she was. I thought about 11 months. The coffee, the playlist, the reading position that defied structural logic, the film on a Friday, the specific piece of a flat where two people have stopped performing for each other. I thought about the November illness specifically. 4 months in, properly ill, temperature and wretchedness. She had knocked on my door at 7 in the evening and said I've made soup. It's not great, but it's hot, and had sat on the edge of my bed while I ate it and talked to me about nothing in particular. Just talked, the way you talk to someone to give them company without asking anything of them. I had lain there thinking I could not remember the last time someone had done that without it feeling like a duty. It had not felt like a duty. It had felt like the most natural thing in any room I had been in for a very long time. 3 days later, when I was functional again, I had gone to the studio door and knocked and said thank you for the soup, and she had said it wasn't very good, and I had said it was exactly right. And she had looked at me for one moment, with the particular directness she brought to everything, and then gone back to her screen. And I had gone back to the kitchen, and I had stood there for a few seconds doing nothing. I had not examined any of this. I had been extraordinarily diligent about not examining any of this. The film was 3 Fridays ago, I said. Yes, she said. I drove home from that Friday, I said, and I sat in the car for a few minutes before I came upstairs. She went very still. Why? She asked. Because I was trying to decide, I said, whether what had just happened was normal, or whether I had been telling myself it was normal for 11 months and it wasn't. Something in her face shifted. Not dramatically, just the small private change of someone receiving something they had been waiting for and not being sure they would. What did you decide? She said. Her voice was almost level, almost that I'd been telling myself it was normal, I said. because the alternative was terrifying, and I didn't want to be wrong about something that matters this much. She was quiet, for a moment. Long enough that I heard the pigeon again. Long enough that I noticed the coffee she hadn't poured yet. The counter between us. The morning light doing what morning light does in a kitchen where someone has thought carefully about which windows face which way. Then she reached across and picked up the phone. She held it a moment, set it back down, face down this time. "I left it there," she said, "because I couldn't do the other thing." "What's the other thing?" "Just say it." She looked at me directly. "I've been trying to just say it for about 4 months, and I keep making it into a plan. I think of how to say it, and then I think of what happens if it goes wrong, and then I don't say it." The phone was me, running out of plans. She said it the way she said everything that mattered. Quietly, without performance, giving it exactly the weight it had, and no more. I thought about the soup in November. I thought about the bookshelf she'd fixed without asking. I thought about the Friday evenings that had become a habit neither of us had named. I thought about all the plans I had also made and unmade over the same 4 months, the same calculation arriving at the same answer, and the answer always being, not yet, too much risk. Wait for something clearer. She had given me something clearer. She had put it on the counter at 7 in the morning and waited an hour and 15 minutes. The least I could do was cross a kitchen. I thought about what it took to leave a phone on a counter for an hour and 15 minutes and then walk out and see someone holding it and say, "Go ahead. I left it there for you." I thought about what that kind of courage costs, and about the fact that she had paid it without flinching, and about the fact that I was a city planner who spent his professional life telling people that inaction had consequences just as real as action, and that I had spent 4 months applying exactly no part of that understanding to the situation in my own kitchen. The professional answer was, wait, assess, confirm all variables before committing. The morning's answer was simpler and cost more. I came around the counter. I stopped when I was close enough that stopping was a choice, not a default. Close enough that she would know I had arrived here deliberately, that I had calculated nothing and decided everything. 4 months, I said. I've been useless for approximately the same amount of time. We could have saved a lot of Sunday mornings. She laughed, short and startled and real, the kind that slips out before the person is ready. Her eyes were bright. "Don't," she said. "I'm just noting the inefficiency," I said. Professionally, she shook her head. She was smiling, properly, the one that was slightly crooked on the left and that I had been cataloging for 11 months without letting myself know I was doing it. She reached out, not taking, offering, her hand near mine, the distance close to something that required a decision. I took her hand. She exhaled, quietly, the kind that means something held has been put down. Neither of us said anything for a moment. The coffee still wasn't made. The pigeon had moved on. The morning was doing exactly what it had been doing before, entirely indifferent to the fact that the flat had rearranged itself around something new. Hannah found out on Thursday, which was always when she found out things. She came round, walked into the kitchen, looked at us, looked at the kitchen, looked at us again, and said, finally, "I've been managing this situation for 4 months, and I would like to be thanked." Layla said, "You sent 1 text." Hannah said, "A very good text." I said, "It was a good text." Layla looked at me. I looked at her. Hannah made herself coffee with the confidence of a person who has earned it. She moved the phone charger to my side of the kitchen 6 weeks later. Not her charger, just the habit of it, the assumption that her phone needed to be in range of where I was in the evenings. I noticed. I didn't say anything, Some things announce themselves quietly and don't need a speech. The playlist is still on when she works. I still associate it with Sunday afternoons and whatever she's cooking, and the specific piece of being somewhere I want to be without having to explain why. The difference now is that I let myself know that's what it is. She told me, months later, quietly, over the same kitchen counter, that she'd almost moved the phone before I came down. That she'd gone back and forth on it twice and had made herself leave it because the alternative was another 4 months of planning and not saying it, and she'd decided she was done with not saying it. I told her she'd been braver than me. She said we'd been equally useless, just in different ways. She was right. She is right about most things. I have learned to say so early, partly because it's true, and partly because she looks at me a specific way when I admit it, a way I have stopped filing under the wrong category. Nothing arrived without warning. It had been arriving for 11 months, in coffee and playlists, and 2 hours of talking while rain organized itself on the windows. We had simply, finally, stopped looking away from it.